Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Amethyst Room Witch here. As I said last week, I'm going to be talking about other types of witchcraft in today's video. So sorry. Slightly noisy street today. So there are quite a few on the list. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. So it's 31. So there's quite a few more than the 7 I think it was last week. So why is that cushion flopped? Stay. There we go. Sorry, cushions have to be just so with me. So I'm going to get started with Sea Witch. Now it's not like Ursula from that very famous film, but a sea witch does have ties to water, particularly the seas and oceans. So they're most likely to use water as their favoured element. They can use anything relating to a beach. For example, sand, shells, driftwood, anything like that within their craft. And they feel and the sea witch is most likely to feel connected to water and the ancient folklore that surrounds sirens. So it's very much a water-based craft, is the sea craft. Then there's the elemental, which is a study and practice based on the 4 main elements. So that's earth, air, fire and water. It's based on honouring each element in its own right. An elemental witch may have an altar for each element. So instead of having, one celebrating all 4, they'll have 4. They'll call on the elements when doing any spell or ritual, and may have an element that they personally identify with more than the rest, which is fine. We all do. I'm rather airy, but at the same time I quite like to be grounded, so I'm a duo. Next there's a cosmic or star witch, which is very much me, which is a witch who's interested in the cosmos, astrology, astronomy. They'll work the same elements and celestial energy into their practice. They're likely to follow the planets and their activities, like retrogrades, the alignments of stars as well, and they're likely to base spells and rituals on those different placements. So, for example, Mercury retrograde, they'd have a ritual for Mercury retrograde. The same with Jupiter, same with any of the planetary retrogrades, the pre-shadow, the post-shadow. I'll get more into that in another video, don't worry. But yes, they'd have a spell or ritual for the various placements, but also with each planet being in a particular sign as well. So there is that as well. So, for example, Mercury, I think, is in Gemini. I believe Mercury's in Gemini. I'm sure Jupiter's doing a double, Pisces and Aquarius. So again, there'd be different spells and rituals for each planetary place, each zodiac placement of the planets. Next we've got the secular witch, which is a type of craft where Spirituality is a very separate concept to the casting of spells using crystals, herbs, oils, candles, etc. They don't tend to worship deities or higher beings. Excuse me. And the practice is completely non-religious. Unlikely to believe in the power behind energy or presence of energy. They can be spiritual people, but their actual main practice of witchcraft is not. So there is there's a little grey area in there. Then we've got the solitary witch, which I am. Solitary, what was last week's one? Eclectic. Solitary eclectic. Or eclectic solitary. That's, it's any type of witch, but it's someone who practices on their own instead of in a group or coven. Now, as much as I know a few witchy-y sort of people, I don't really meet up with them. So there is that side of it. And, you know, it's by choice or because they haven't yet found a group that they want to work with. So for me, I'm quite happy doing this on my own. It's definitely a learning curve for me, but it's not for everyone, and that's fine. You know, there are legends of solitary witches being reincarnations of witches who've been practicing for generations, and when they reach puberty, they are then awakened, and because their knowledge and understanding of witchcraft is much older, there's less of a need for a coven compared to someone who's, not. Next, we've got the angel witch, who is someone who works with angels in their craft, whether that's instead of or alongside a deity is up to the individual. But if you work with angels and you're a witch, you could class yourself as an angel witch. Next, I've got the animist witch, who believes in life, that there's life in all things. There's no distinction between plant, animal, human, or even material objects. So a piece of paper would have just as much life in it as, say, a cat. Sorry, I'm saying a cat because I'm looking at a sleeping kitten, but she's not a kitten anymore. But she's still Diddy. She's still my kitten. An animist witch is likely to be someone who sees the universe as a living entity and being in its own right, and that everyone and everything is connected by it. The art witch is someone who would use their art within their practice, or as their practice, I should say. So, if you were doing a piece of art for someone, you could weave a spell into, the artwork as you're applying each cut, as you're using each colour to form the painting. You could, build the spell that way. There's a variety of ways that this can be done. Celtic witch, who is someone who focuses on Celtic and Welsh deities. They can be quite interlinked. There are a few similarities between them. Or Celtic Welsh mythology and rituals. It's a very earth-based magic. Chaos witch. This is, I can see where some people can get confused with this one. The chaos witch is someone who incorporates many types of magic, who is guided intuitively instead of with strict steps. So instead of being handed like a recipe for a specific type of, bread's my thing. Don't know why, but I'm obsessed with bread right now. I don't know why. I was in last week's one as well. But if you want to make a specific type of bread, you can, hodgepodge it, or you can go and find a recipe where it's very specific. You've got definite things to you know, definite steps to follow. But with the chaos magic, it's definitely the hodgepodging, as I call it, that goes on instead of the, you know, step 1, step 2. Next, we've got the Chthonoi witch, which is an Alexandrian witch who follows Greek gods and goddess, you know, who follows the Greek pantheon, which is, you know, that's fine. Next, we've got the Crystal Witch. Focuses heavily on crystals. Crystals would form a part of every spell and ritual. You know, calling on that crystal if they don't have it. You know, calling on that power, that energy of it. But it would feature in almost everything, if not everything, most likely everything. Next we have the Dianic Witch. It's a branch of, it can be Wiccan. It's normally a branch of Wicca. Focuses on female deities. Doesn't have to follow the goddess Diana, Roman goddess Diana, who was the ruler of moon, nature, and hunting. But it's definitely a female-oriented craft. Next, we have the Egyptian witch. Again, it's similar to the Dianic and the, you know, the other ones. Can't think of them now. But they focus on the Egyptian deities. Then you've got the fairy witch, who works with the fae, very heavily rooted in Irish and Scottish culture, folklore. It's definitely an interesting one. Next, we've got the Hearth Witch, very similar to the Kitchen Witch. They focus their magic on the home, so not just on food and the kitchen, it's the home in general. Next, we've got the Hellenic Witch, who, instead of being the Chthonoi witch, it's definitely a pagan. There's definitely pagan elements of this. But they do follow the Greek deities. So, well, I say follow, worships. There's elements of worship going on there. Next, I didn't know about this until I had a little look-see into the various types of witches and found a list as, you know, as long as a piece of string. Left-handed witch. There is a right-handed witch as well. So the left-handed witch is someone who often breaks taboos. So, for example, you know, well, I can't really think of anything. But, you know, if there's something that's more taboo and frowned upon, the left-handed witch is going to do it. I'm going to call the left-handed witch the rebel witch. I've come up with a new one. Whereas the right-handed witch practices based on societal norms, what society calls normal. But that's okay. You know, we don't all have to be right-handed. We don't all have to be left-handed with our craft. You know, it is what it is. Next, we've got the Luciferian witch. Not to be confused with Satanism. That's a completely different kettle of fish. But a Luciferian witch is someone who would believe that Lucifer is the bringer of light and would revere Lucifer for enlightenment, independence, progressive ideas, and for questioning authority. So there's definitely a moment there. Next, we've got the Lunar Witch. Would use the moon cycles, the lunar cycle, to do almost everything. So depending on which phase of the moon, depends on what's going to happen within their practice. The Music Witch is like the Art Witch, and there is another one. I'm sure there's another one. There's music. tech witch. Not really. But the music witch is very much like the art witch, where music is their practice. So through creating certain songs, certain symphonies, there'd be spells woven into that. We've got the neo-pagan witch next. Now, neo-pagan is... because I don't really like the term neo-pagan. It's pagan, whether it's new or not. But neo-pagan is neo-pagan witch is an umbrella term for anyone who practices newer forms of the craft, like Wicca, Gardnerian, Alexandrian, all of those newer sort of branches that have cropped up. Next, we've got the Norse witch. Now, this craft centres around Norse traditions and Norse deities. So, Loki, Thor, Odin, Freya, they're all in there. They'd all be part of that to some extent. Next, we've got the Satanic Witch. Doesn't have anything to do with the Christian concept of devil worship, which does exist but isn't exclusive to witchcraft. I did have a moment last year when I came out the broom closet to one of my neighbours, and they literally saw my pentacle pendant and immediately asked if I was into devil worship. And it shocked me, because it shouldn't shock me, but it did. It was the first time I'd had that encounter. But just because someone's a witch doesn't mean that, they cavort with the devil and so on. But a satanic witch lives by the seven satanic tenets. It is strongly against a dictatorial society, but apart from that, has nothing to do with devil worship or the Christian version of the devil, which is technically based on a Celtic deity. I'll go into that in another video. Next, we've got the Scandinavian witch, who practices and studies Danish folklore as well as some Norse traditions, because it's sort of that general area and they're all very, very influenced by the others. So that's where there's some Norse in it as well. The shamanic witch, shaman witch, tends to use an altered state of consciousness to deliver their practice, to cultivate their practice. Then we've got the sigil witch. I am very much into sigils. I love making them, creating them. Can also be a word witch, but it's a witch who uses sigils and or words weaved into their magic. So it's, technically every one of us could be a word witch, unless you'd rather not use words, which is absolutely fine as well. But yep, no, that's another one. Next, there's the tech witch, who is someone who does most of their work digitally, or with a piece of tech at least. It's definitely something that's becoming more popular. Technically, I'm a tech witch for doing this. I hadn't really thought of that until now. But yes. Next, we've got the Theleme witch. I don't really know how to pronounce it. it's someone who uses occult philosophies, or uses the occult philosophies of Aleister Crowley, which was centered around ceremonial magic and Egyptian rituals. So again, there's a bit of a merging, a mix of two. And then finally we've got the hedge witch. Now, hedge witchery is sometimes sort of used as a term for green witch or garden witch. But a hedge witch is a witch who jumps between the worlds. It's like there's a hedge splitting this world from the spirit world, and they jump that hedge to communicate and send messages between the worlds. Tend to be an astral projector. They can astrally project, as well as work with herbs and use earth-based magic. So again, it's another term that can be used as an umbrella term. So there's quite a few umbrella terms floating around. But I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've learnt something as I have today. I hope you'll be back next week. I think next week is the unboxing video. If not, I will let you know. But then after that, I think I'll do whether you need to be, whether you actually need to have a label for your craft. I think that could be a juicy one. So I shall see you again next week. I hope you all stay safe, and blessed be.